story is Amelia's Road by Linda Jacobs Altman. Amelia Louise Martinez hated roads. Straight roads, curved roads, dirt roads, paved roads, roads leading to all manner of strange places, and all roads leading nowhere at all. Amelia hated roads so much that she cried every time her dad took out the map. The roads Amelia knew went to farms where workers labored, sun-struck fields, and lived in the grim gray shanties. Los Caminos. The roads were long and cheerless. They never went where you wanted them to go. It was almost dark when the rusty old car pulled to a stop in front of a cabin number 12 at the labor camp. "Is this the same cabin we had last year?" Amelia asked. But nobody remembered. It didn't seem to matter to the rest of the family. But it mattered a lot to Amelia. From one year to the next, there was nothing to show Amelia had lived there, gone to school in this town, or worked in these fields. Amelia wanted to settle down. She wanted to feel like she belonged. "Maybe someday," said her mother, but that wonderful someday, it just never seemed to come. "Mama," Amelia asked, "where was I born?" Mrs. Martinez paused for a moment and smiled. "Where? Let me see. It must have been Yuba City, because I remember we were picking peaches at the time." "That's right, peaches," said Mr. Martinez, "which means you were born in June." Amelia sighed. Her father remembered days and dates. He remembered crops. Mr. Martinez marked all the important occasions of life by the never-ending rhythm of harvest. The next day, everybody got up at dawn. From 5 to almost 8 in the morning, Amelia and her family picked apples, even though she still felt sleepy. Amelia had to be extra careful so that she did not bruise the fruit. By the time she could finish her morning's work, Amelia's hands were stung and her shoulders were sore and ached. She grabbed an apple and hurried off to school. Last year, Amelia spent 6 weeks at Fillmore Elementary School, and not even the teacher had bothered to learn her name. This year, the teacher bothered. She welcomed all the new children to her classroom and gave them all name tags to wear. She wore a name tag herself and said, "Mrs. Ramos." Later, Miss Ramos asked the class to draw their dearest wishes. "Share with us something that is really special to you." Amelia knew exactly what she would be. She drew a pretty white house with a big green tree in the front yard. And when Amelia finished, Miss Ramos showed the picture to the whole class. Then she pasted a big red star on top of it. By the end of the day, everybody in class had learned Amelia's name. Finally, here was a place she wanted to stay. Amelia couldn't wait to tell her mother about this wonderful day. Feeling as bright as the sky, she decided to look for a shortcut back to camp. That's when she found it. The accidental road. Amelia called it the accidental road because it was narrow and rocky and more like a footpath than a road. And it happened by accident. It was a road that nobody had really built on purpose. She followed it over a grassy meadow, through a clump of bushes, and down a gentle hill. And there, where the accidental road ended, she stood by the most wondrous tree. It was old beyond knowing, and quite the sturdiest, most permanent thing Amelia had ever seen. When she closed her eyes, she could even picture in front of her tiny white house. Amelia danced for joy, her black hair flying as she twirled around and around in her own silent meadow. Almost every day when work and school were over, Amelia would sit beneath this tree and pretend that she had come home. More than anywhere in the world, she wanted this to belong, and this to be her place, and she wanted to know that it belonged to her. But the harvest was almost over, and Amelia didn't know what to do. Oh, by the time it came to leaving, she was no idea how she was going to do it. She asked everyone for advice: her sister Rosa, her parents, her brother Hector, her neighbors at the camp, and even Miss Ramos at school. But nobody could tell her what to do. The answer, when it came, was nearly as accidental as that road. Amelia found an old metal box that somebody had tossed into the trash. It was dented and rusty, but Amelia did not care. That box was the answer to her problems. She set to work at once, filling it with Amelia's things. First, she put the hair ribbon her mother had made for her. Next came her name tag from Miss Ramos had given her, and then a photograph of her whole family taken on her last birthday. And after that, the picture she'd drawn in class with the bright red star on it. Finally, she took out a sheet of paper and drew a map to the accidental road from the highway, the very old tree, and in her best lettering she wrote, Amelia's Road, on the path. And then she folded the map and put it into her box. When the apples were finally picked, Amelia's family and the other workers had to get ready to move again. Amelia made one more trip down the accidental road, but this time she went with her treasure box. She dug a hole near the old tree and gently placed the box inside and covered it over with dirt. Then she set a rock on top so that nobody would notice the freshly turned ground. When Amelia finished, she took a step back, looked at the tree, and finally, here was a place where she belonged, a place where she could come back to. I'll be back, she whispered, and then turned away. Amelia skipped through the meadow, laughed at the sky, and even turned cartwheels right in the middle of the accidental road. And when she got back to camp, the rest of the family had already started packing the car. Amelia watched them for a moment, and then took a deep breath and joined them in the car. For the first time in her life, she didn't cry when her father took out the road map. The end. Now, a note from the author. Amelia Louise Martinez and her family are like thousands of others that are often referred to as migrant workers. This is because they usually move from one harvest to another, and they do not have stable homes. Many of the migrant workers come from different parts of the world, such as Mexico, South America, the Caribbean, even Africa. But many of them are American citizens born in the United States. Some of the male workers travel by themselves and return to their families. Out of necessity, even their children sometimes have to work in the field. The constant work and moving about makes it very hard for families, and children especially, to make friends and feel like they belong. In this story about Amelia, the author's hope is that it will show how one girl finds a favorite place.